everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com and it's Friday. Gotta get down on Friday. Everybody's looking forward to the weekend, especially me, because it's my favourite time of the week, and that's because it's time for my Wrestlers of the Week. Very lovely. Now first, of course, let's take a look at the honourable mentions. Becky Lynch and Asuka had a great match on Monday Night Raw. Noam Dar is the new ICW champion. That's up on demand now. I didn't want to spoil it previously, but you can go and watch that now. Kenny Omega and Hangman Page holding on to those AEW tag team titles on Dynamite this week, and Santana as well from the Inner Circle, putting on a great performance, not just in the ring in the main event, but also in that sit-down interview with JR. And Kenta as well, the ultimate villain of New Japan at the moment, almost getting the job done against Tetsuya Naito, but just coming up short. But he made the double champion suffer for it. And that's it for the honourable mentions. Right, now let's get into the top 10. Number 10 this week, let's go to AEW Dynamite and talk about just the worst person in the world, MJF. MJF often steals the show even when he doesn't have a match on Dynamite because he's so good at getting everybody to hate him because he's a horrible dick. But he had a match this week against Jungle Boy, and what a match it was. This was a great display of just talent from two very young guys who are excellent in the ring, and it's easy to see how Jungle Boy's excellent in the ring because he's so nimble and quick and agile and exciting to watch, but it's easy to forget that MJF's really good in the ring as well. This was very apparent in the early stages of the match, where both men went through a series of reversals and counters and rolls and everything. Really solid fundamentals elevated to a very high level. And also, whenever MJF had like the heat segment, whenever he was beating down Jungle Boy, he was so good at just timing everything he did, wringing every drop of hatred and heat out of that crowd and making the match a more compelling one because of it. But did he pick up a clean victory? Did he? Balls! MJF did not pick up a clean victory because Wardlow slipped him the Dynamite Diamond ring from the outside of the ring. He turned around, smacked Jungle Boy in the face, and Jungle Boy was out of it. And he hit the double cross as well, but that wasn't necessary. Jungle Boy was already unconscious. The referee missed it. I hate MJF. I hate him so much. He also continued the ongoing excellent feud with Cody, building up to their match, presumably if Cody can fulfill all of the stipulations, their match at Revolution, especially because Brandy was on commentary and he gestured towards her in a vulgar fashion and said, "You can have a real man." And JR was just like, "Shut up, you punk," which was funny in a way. But yeah, everyone hates MJF. Everybody wants him to lose to Cody. And that's why I'm worried that Cody is going to lose that match himself. 1 point for MJF. Now let's move on to number 9 this week. Let's go to DragonGate and talk about a man who featured last year early on and then kind of dropped off. Hopefully that's not what happens in 2020 because he is excellent. I'm talking about KZ. KZ, spelled KZY. It's a normal name, don't question it. Last year had a real, genuine, bona fide match of the year candidate against Pac for the Open the Dream Gate Championship, the top title in Dragon Gate, and came up short. Pac defeated him in what was an absolute barn burner. Now, about 12 months later, he's had another shot at the Open the Dream Gate Championship against current champion Naruki Doi, and came up short again, sustaining a lot of punishment as well to the head and the neck and the back, but still always managing to keep fighting on, staying resilient, until eventually he was just put away right towards the end. And no matter how much everybody wants KZ to win because he's so captivating and charismatic and reckless and exciting to watch in the ring as well, he's so quick, you never really truly believe that he can get the job done. Now I believe, or I like to believe, that this is eventually going to lead to him winning the belt at some point, maybe in a year's time, maybe in 2 years' time, who knows. But I think that if/when he does win that title, it's going to be an absolutely amazing spectacle. But for now, this was just another stepping stone towards, hopefully, that ending. When you start watching a promotion that you're not so familiar with, it's always the sort of flashier guys who catch your eye at first, or maybe the ones who are very charismatic, not necessarily the ones who are excellent in ring. So when I first got into New Japan, for example, it wasn't Okada and Tanahashi who first caught my eye, it was Tetsuya Naito because of his unique charisma and the way that he held himself and everything. In a very different way, KZ is similar to that, and I think could be a useful asset for Dragon Gate in attracting new eyes to their product, just because he looks different, he moves kind of differently, and he's, as I mentioned, excellent in the ring. So 2 points to KZ. Maybe you'll get that belt one day, mate. I believe in you. Don't put money on it. Let's move to number 8 now, picking up 3 points this week. We're sticking in Japan, but we're moving over to Stardom, and we're going to talk about their current reigning and defending champion, Mayu Iwatani. Well, reigning is accurate, but I'm not sure if defending is, because this week she had an excellent match but it was a non-title one. Basically, the story behind this match is quite intriguing and resulted in a very, very bold booking decision from Stardom. Basically, Iwatani was scheduled to face Sareee, but she was struck down by an illness, and I mean, hopefully she gets well soon and everything. On the day or the day before the match, in very short notice, a new opponent was arranged, and Mayu faced an opponent from outside of Stardom, who we'll get to a little bit later on. But how was this a bold booking decision? Well, you'd expect in this sort of situation for the home girl, the Stardom champion, to win the match and just prove her dominance again and keep her title reign strong. No, she took a hellacious amount of punishment in this match. She was always the underdog from pretty much start to finish, and she lost in the end. Absolutely shocking scenes over in Stardom. But I like it. I like it as a booking decision. It's a very brave one. It's quite unusual to willingly have your champion lose, even in a non-title match, against someone who isn't even a full-time roster member. But at the same time, it adds a little bit of intrigue to a title reign which otherwise was your standard kind of Japanese promotions title reign with a really undefeatable champion who the crowd all love and get behind. But now she's shown a little bit of vulnerability, well, a lot of vulnerability actually, in losing this match. And I think it's going to make the next few matches she has even more exciting. So 3 points to Mayu Iwatani, who's had a very strong start to 2020, putting on excellent match after excellent match, and she is actually, I think at the moment, one of the front runners of the Wrestlers of the Week League table. From one women's champion to another, let's go back to AEW and talk about the new women's champion over there, Nyla Rose. This week's Dynamite was a very strong show, and one of the most impressive parts of the show was the women's title match between Riho and Nyla Rose. A lot of people were saying this was the best women's match that AEW have put on since the company's inception, and I can't off the top of my head think of a better one. I think I probably have to agree with that. It was really well done. Two wrestlers who by now are very familiar with each other, the bigger, more imposing challenger in Nyla Rose taking on the smaller, yes, she's a champion, but the smaller underdog in the form of Riho, and trying to physically dominate her at every possible opportunity. The crowd really helped this match as well, because yes, it was slightly slow in points, but at the same time, I mean, if we're looking at it purely in terms of how good was this match, just in terms of work rate, I think you have to give the edge to Mayu Iwatani's match over in Stardom. But if we're looking at it as a story and a spectacle with all the crowd getting involved and everything, then this was the bigger one, and it benefited, of course, from the fact that it had a title change, whereas the Stardom match was, as I mentioned, non-title. A big part of this match was when Riho nailed the double stomp from the top rope, and Nyla Rose kicked out of one, and everyone was like, oh, she's not staying down. Then she hit two further top rope double stomps, and then Nyla got both feet on the ropes, and everyone was like, this is looking bad. And then Riho charged at Nyla, big spear, beast bomb, and the new AEW Women's Champion is Nyla Rose. And then afterwards, of course, she went backstage and was like, where's my party? Jericho got a party, and then Tony was there, wasn't he? Big Tony Khan giving her the world's most awkward hug. In the world's most awkward coat as well, Tony. Back to Japan now for number 6 on this week's list, and it's the current double champion, the champ of New Japan Pro Wrestling, and my boy, Tetsuya Naito. At the New Beginning in Osaka, Naito faced Kenta in a match that was set up at the very end of Wrestle Kingdom back in January, when of course Naito had finally won. He'd achieved his destiny, his destino. He held both belts, he was in the ring, he was cutting the customary post-show promo that the winner gets to at the end of Wrestle Kingdom, and then Kenta jumped him and sat on his chest with both belts and went, ha, I've ruined your moment, effectively. This was a big break of convention for how New Japan normally do things. Usually the end of Wrestle Kingdom is a very final affair, and it's like, yay, there's the winner, he's won, let's go home. No, this was really unusual, and it set up this bitter match that we saw this week between Naito and Kenta. And I think rightly so, Naito did pick up the victory, but he really had to suffer for it. Not only did Naito face interference from the likes of Jay White, who was then fought off by Bushi and later Takahashi, but he also had to deal with a really nasty head injury. He was rammed into an exposed turnbuckle. I don't know if it was just a complete accident or whether he bladed and it went wrong, but he was gushing blood and it looked very nasty indeed. But unfortunately, it is an unfortunate truth of wrestling. Sometimes that can help a match. Sometimes blood adds to the drama. We saw it plenty in the Attitude Era, and I think that was the case here, with Naito looking even more of a victim at the hands of Kenta than he had done previously at the end of Wrestle Kingdom, but then heroically managing to fight back and eventually put Kenta away with a big climactic destino. What's next for Tetsuya Naito? Well, I think we'll get onto that in just a little bit, but for now, it was a good showing from him. Not the best match on the card, but it was a very strong card, and it might be the sort of show, The New Beginning in Osaka, that we look back on at the end of 2020 and say that was one of the shows of the year. Number 5, sticking with The New Beginning in Osaka and talking about another wrestler in New Japan, and a very scary man. But scary in a lovable way, or lovable in a scary way. One of the two, the second one I think. It's Minoru Suzuki. This was such a perfect matchup because Suzuki was facing off against none other than Jon Moxley, a match that all of us wanted to see when Moxley first appeared in New Japan, and we were all like, oh my god, he can face Suzuki, it's going to be awesome. And then Suzuki was not in that year's G1 Climax, and we were all really disappointed. Not that Moxley's run in the G1 Climax wasn't good anyway, but the match with Suzuki I think would have really capped it off, but thankfully they got around to it in the end, and it certainly didn't disappoint. This match had pretty much everything you want in a big nasty brawl. There was a ref bump or two just to help them use weapons basically, but it had like a chair duel at the start, it had whatever this contraption is, it had people kicking out of finishers. It was just pure entertainment from start to finish, but it wasn't totally mindless. There was some substance here as well. Yeah, this match was kind of based on a weird sort of respect, which became more apparent as it went on, with Suzuki seeming to enjoy it more and more the more Moxley beat the crap out of him. We all love that, don't we? We all love getting kicked in the face. And eventually, although Suzuki did lose, I don't think this takes away his momentum, because I think the seeds of a new story could have been put in place. I might be reading this wrong, but the fact that after the match, Zack Sabre Jr., Suzuki's stablemate, came out and attacked Moxley doesn't just set up a future Moxley-Zack Sabre Jr. bout, it also, in my mind, sets up a future Suzuki-Zack Sabre Jr. bout. Yes, this could be the end of Suzuki-Gun. The reason that I'm thinking this is because Suzuki clearly did develop a respect for Moxley over the course of this match, and then for Zack to come in and just jump Moxley from behind, it really might leave a sour taste in Suzuki's mouth. And that, if that was to set up Suzuki versus Zack, that would be an absolute killer match as well. And assuming Zack won that feud, a way to elevate a younger star further up the card. Next up, number 4, I talked about Mayu Iwatani's excellent match where she just got destroyed really. Now let's talk about her opponent in that match, Takumi Iroha. Iroha hasn't appeared in Stardom for I think about 2 years. She's been wrestling elsewhere, so it was a bit of a surprise to see her come back in the first place. I explained the circumstances of her being the replacement opponent earlier in this video, but also an even bigger surprise to see her just casually knock off the World of Stardom champion and stand tall. And they showed respect to each other afterwards and stuff, but man, that's a brave piece of booking, that, isn't it? The match was brutal. I'll be honest, it's the first Takumi Iroha match I've ever seen. I was really impressed. She's just a badass. She looks like a dangerous woman. Whereas Iwatani, but in contrast, you know, she's like just a happy baby face and everything. One who's excellent at wrestling, but you wouldn't look at her and think, oh, she's a dangerous woman. Takumi, on the other hand, clearly a very dangerous woman, and it's not just her appearance, it's her moveset in the ring and the emphasis that she hits every single move with. And then at the end, very interestingly, Iwatani offered a rematch for the title, which is the right thing to do, the good babyface thing to do. Iroha was like, yes mate, I'm all for that. But that's not who Iwatani's next opponent's going to be. I believe that's going to be Jungle Kyona. So Iroha is kind of left out in the dark, but I don't think that's an accident. I don't think that's an oversight. I think that this is all going to lead somewhere. In this video, I'm really showing a lot of faith in booking, aren't I? I'm saying, just about everyone, I'm saying, oh, this is going to lead to better things down the line. This new optimism, I don't know what it's all about. It must be because it's Friday, my favorite time of the week. Next up, number 3, let's talk about my favorite match of the week, and one of the most, I think, not underrated because everyone knows he's good, but underappreciated. Yeah, one of the most underappreciated wrestlers in the world today. Not Dragon Lee anymore, Ryu Lee. That's his new name. Oh, it's going to take some getting used to. And by the way, I know that Ryu means dragon in Japanese, right? I know that, okay? Don't come at me with your Japanese knowledge, yeah? I've been there. I spent almost a week in Tokyo, and now I know everything there is to know about the lovely country of Japan. I'm being very sarcastic. Lee versus Takahashi has been one of the best long-term feuds in wrestling. Maybe ever? Is that too much of a stretch to say? I don't know, but they always kill it each and every time they come together, and you know, the story continues to develop. In this one, the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title was on the line, and even though he lost, Lee looked so strong in defeat. He took it to Takahashi, his ultimate rival, and you know, he was hitting all of his signature moves, the insane suicide dive that he does, one of the best in the business today, maybe the best, and also he kicked out of the time bomb towards the end, but was then put away by a second finisher. But even though he lost, I had to give Lee quite a hefty whack of points this week, 8 points for Ryu Lee. I just think that despite losing, he looked really strong in defeat, and he always looks so impressive in the ring as well. This was my favorite match of the week, and I would really urge you to watch it if you haven't already. Head to New Japan World. Give me the money now, lads. I've shilled your product. Come on. Number 2. Oh man, Jon Moxley, and I love giving him points on Wrestlers of the Week. It's just a contrast to how he was in the latter days of Dean Ambrose in WWE, when he was being booked terribly, clearly struggling through motivation issues, but still trying his best, I reckon, just not being given anything to work with. And now, with all of the compelling storylines that he'd won in wrestling in multiple promotions, Jon Moxley is absolutely killing it, and 2020 could very well just be his year on the whole. So of course I've talked about the match with Suzuki in New Japan. He won that match, it was really entertaining as well, and it sets up a future feud with Zack Sabre Jr. And also at the same time, he's doing really well over in AEW. He's absolutely killing it in 2 massive promotions. Over in AEW, he had a match with Santana this week of the Inner Circle, and it was a match that I really wasn't that excited for, because I was like, well, Moxley's going to run over him and steamroll his way to that match with Jericho, but they made it really compelling, whether it was from Santana's excellent sit-down interview with Jim Ross, or whether it was the match itself, which wasn't the best match on the show. That was probably the women's title match or the tag team title match, but it was still a very good match given the predictable nature of its result. Both men were just going for each other's eyes, which is horrible, but really good. And then the ending was really unique as well, with both men now totally blinded because Moxley had targeted Santana's eyes, and then Ortiz, Santana's tag partner, had spat alcohol into Moxley's good eyes, so they were both just stumbling around, not able to see. They bumped into each other back to back, and Moxley just instinctively spun his opponent around, dropped him with the paradigm shift, and that was enough to pick up the victory, and then got beaten down by the Inner Circle and Jeff Cobb afterwards. So Moxley versus Cobb next week. Could be some more points coming his way. But number 1, and my wrestler of the week, and I think for the 3rd or 4th time in total over the entire course of this series, but the first time this year, it's Hiromu Takahashi, the ticking time bomb himself. I mean, Takahashi, man, what do you say? He's part of that incredible feud with Ryu Lee, and also just brings such a unique energy to his matches that not a lot of other wrestlers can, because he's so crazy and wild. And you are watching his matches sometimes like that, thinking, oh, don't hurt yourself again. We want to see you have good matches for a little while longer, please. And the match, as I mentioned, was excellent. My favorite match of the week, and also another intriguing future setup for Takahashi in the unlikely form of his stable leader, Tetsuya Naito from LIJ. Now, because he helped out Naito in that match against, who was Naito facing again? I've just talked about it. Kenta, of course. In helping out Naito in that match against Kenta, Takahashi has sort of set himself up for a match with Naito. In fact, at the end of the show, Naito called out Takahashi and said, do you want to have a match, mate? Takahashi was like, yes. And I think that could be really exciting. I think Naito will win because he's a double champion and everything. But I think that it's a real opportunity for Takahashi to show what he can do and show that he's not just one of the best, maybe the best junior heavyweight in New Japan, but one of the best wrestlers in New Japan as well, because he is. He's got to be one of the best wrestlers, maybe even in the world. And just before we move on to the league table, I do want to focus on a specific part of this match when it looked as though Lee was going to injure Takahashi again, and the crowd just gasped in shock and horror because we didn't want to see it. And then he reversed that into a lovely destroyer, and the match progressed towards its end game. It's little moments like that that Takahashi really does put into a lot of his matches, playing on the emotions of the crowd, and he absolutely excels at it. Congratulations, Hiromu Takahashi, you are my wrestler of the week. And now let's take a look at the league table with a new leader, Jon Moxley, with Takahashi joining Okada in joint second place, and Mayu Iwatani up on 15 points, continuing her excellent start to 2020. But let's just think ahead to Sunday, where myself and Sam will be streaming our reactions to NXT TakeOver Portland at the weekend. A lot of opportunities there for the likes of Adam Cole, Tommaso Ciampa, Finn Balor, Johnny Gargano, Rhea Ripley, and Bianca Belair to pick up a hefty chunk of lovely points. See you then. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.